This is a very interesting movie who addresses a very important issue, and that is the fact that activism isn't always easy. It shows clearly that there is, even if people agree on a cause or a given topic, that there are people for whom these actions come with consequences and those who don't face consequences. And therefore, it's not easy to have the same principles or to live the same principles, which this movie addresses quite nicely, I think. So, a short summary without any spoilers. This movie takes place in 1988 when the Conservative government under Margaret Thatcher tries to enact a law. And basically, the gist is that the Conservatives want to pretend or declare that homosexuals shouldn't be t-shirts because they just want to prey on the children. Basically, they try to equate homosexuality with pedophiles, which is really, really fucked up. But herein lies the issue. The two main actors, or characters I should say, have different stances because one is a teacher who clearly doesn't want her homosexuality to be public knowledge because A, she will lose her job, and B, she gets branded as a pedophile, which is arguably much worse than losing a job. And the other one seems to not have a job, so for her it's easy to say, just be open with it. And therein lies the main conflict, I think, of the movie. The movie itself is pretty good, like visually it fits, like it plays in the 1980s, so it's not 4K full HD super shiny. It is gritty, which fits. The actors all do a great job. Like, I would say there are like 4 main characters and they're all good. Like, there's no character in this movie that is acted badly. They are all very, very good. Two things I would say are not really that positive for the movie, which is A, it starts very slowly. So in the beginning I thought, well, that's going to be a snooze fest and there's nothing really interesting here, which is a shame because the movie gets interesting. And B is that the fact with the law or the public opinion about homosexuals is not really addressed that openly. Like, you only hear news reports in the background, like on the TV, about this law, but it's never really explained. And the fact that the conservative at that time tried to equate homosexuality with pedophiles is never addressed, which is a shame because that would point out the threat to the main character much better. But on the other hand, it's more subtle this way, more interesting. Like, you don't really immediately see the points of both sides, but it's very interesting. So overall, I would say you should watch this movie. It is very interesting. The acting is very good. And it addresses not only a really bad time in history, like, this is not about some imaginary problems. This is human rights. Like, this movie addresses a point in time where homosexuals had their human rights being taken away. So it's a real issue. And on the other hand, it also shows that it's not always that easy, even for people who are in this group, to take a stance because of circumstances outside of the actual issue, which is very interesting. So you should watch this movie. I can just recommend it. It's really good. And now for a bit more spoiler heavy things. So if you want to watch this movie, and you should stop watching this review right now. The interesting thing in this movie is, which I find greatly portrayed, is the conflict between I'm guessing in the end they're not girlfriends anymore, but let's call them that. That one is a teacher and she doesn't want to let her homosexuality be known because she wants to keep her job, obviously. And the other one doesn't have a job and just wants her to be open about it and doesn't like it. So in the beginning I was like, yeah, that makes sense. She wants to keep her job, and the other one is an idiot because she doesn't understand that. Then it gets more complicated when one of her students gets involved because she's also a lesbian, and then she plays the blame game, like you are a bad example, yada yada yada. And then in the end, it turns out the teacher is basically funding the, how do you call it, like the house where a lot of lesbians live because they can't get jobs because of their homosexuality. So she puts the money she makes as a teacher into a fund so they can basically live and pay rent and get food. So it's quite important for everybody that she keeps her job. But the other woman then tells the story, or it's told that she had a relationship before where the woman wasn't ready to accept the fact that she's a lesbian and basically cheated with her former husband and got back to her husband and then came back and she got her heart broken. So it's also understandable that she doesn't want to be with somebody who can't admit that she's a lesbian publicly. So both sides have arguments, and it's really interesting because it puts the spin on this topic that it's not that easy to just take a stand. You know, it's understandable that one side wants it out in the open because she got hurt, and the other one not only would lose her job, but would also lose the ability to help the other women financially. So there's a lot of stake. And there's a lot of miscommunications because we are all just human and miscommunications is part of that. So it's very interesting. Like I said, interesting a lot, but that's just what it is. It's very interesting. The plot with the schoolgirl is, I don't know. I understand what the idea was because she basically challenges the status quo. But on the other hand, I don't know. It shouldn't be the responsibility for a teacher to risk her livelihood to basically accept a student into a gay bar. Which raises also the question why a 15-year-old girl just hangs around in a bar. So that doesn't make any sense either. But I guess I know where they were going with it. They don't want the next generation, so to speak, to have the same trouble that the older generation had. They want a better life for those people. Then there's a little bit of a mean girl plot in there that one of the girls like hates the other one. It's never made clearly why exactly, but she fakes an attack and tries to out her, and it doesn't really make sense. I don't know if they wanted to portray her as the homophobic normal person, like in this year or in this age everybody was homophobic and they choose one of the girls to portray this. I don't know if that was the idea or it was just normal mean girls stuff. I don't know. It is the weakest part, I would say, in the movie, because it basically just puts pressure on the teacher, but it wasn't too distracting. Or maybe I just didn't understand what the point of that plotline was. But overall, the movie is very good. It shows clearly that even if when the issue is human rights or no human rights, which shouldn't be an issue, it's still not that cut and dry that everybody can just support it, because people's livelihood is at stake. And as I said, I'm guessing if you get branded as a pedophile, that's much worse than losing your job, and therefore it's understandable that she doesn't want to come out with her sexuality. And on the other hand, it's understandable that her girlfriend doesn't want to live with someone who can't be honest, or so it seems, because she got hurt before. It's very interesting. You should definitely watch it. The acting alone is worth to watch this movie. It's very good. The cinematography is very good. So yeah, I could just hardly recommend this movie.